He's demonizing and dehumanizing the Ukrainian people because if you see these people for what they are, many of them civilians trying to live their lives, then you might say that Vladimir Putin is an aggressor, indeed is a killer with what he's trying to do. Let's cut through the information battle, which is always there. The Putin narrative, and it has been this way with Ukraine, but it's been this way with the Baltic states that he's also tried to undermine. It was there with Georgia in 2008, is always that he is the victim. Not even that the Russian people are the victim, he's the victim. He's encircled by NATO. He's encircled by Western forces. He accompanies that idea of being encircled with the idea that he is the man to make Russia great again, that Russia was humiliated after the end of the Cold War. But there's a paradox here. Putin's an old man. He's been in power for more than 20 years. He wants a legacy. His legacy can't come from the Russian economy, which is badly weakened, where Russian people feel humiliated. It can't come from Russia being part of the international community because he's isolated Russia in many respects. So what does he have to do? He's got to find somewhere for the victory of Greater Russia, his legacy of Greater Russia. That's why Ukraine is the target. But your Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission President, who you heard is absolutely right, it doesn't stop with Ukraine. Vladimir Putin wants to take down the international order throughout all of Eastern Europe.
And that is disturbing. So what might that actually mean? Which country may be his next target? How will he dismantle that?
Well, let's start inside Ukraine and then work out. I think it's the easiest way of saying it. What he's going to try to do in Ukraine, it looks like, is that, we're seeing the bombing, the missiles on all Ukrainian cities except for Lviv, which is out in the far west of the country. We're seeing the Russian ground forces go in as an occupying force now. And they're not just occupying in the Donbass that we always hear about. They're going to occupy Odessa and Mariupol on the Black Sea. They're going to occupy Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city with 1.4 million people. And that way you isolate Kiev. You isolate Kiev and hope that the government falls. At the same time, you keep putting pressure on the Baltic states, the cyber attacks, the economic sabotage. You keep intervening politically in places like Moldova, which is very much vulnerable if Putin wants to strike there, and you intervene in the Balkans. You continue to confuse and disorient the West, where they have to look everywhere through Eastern Europe and not be able to focus just on Ukraine.
Scott, as this is unfolding at such rapid pace, what becomes clear is that Ukraine, despite all the warnings, seems underprepared for this attack that is happening right now. When you see the President Zelensky calling on people to come to the capital and take up arms, this does not seem like an organised defence against the might of Russia.
I think they were organized. They just don't have the forces. I mean, we're talking about 60% or more of Russia's entire army that's on Ukraine borders. We're talking about the most advanced warplanes. And Russia has 14 times more warplanes than Ukraine does. We're talking about hypersonic missiles. So the Ukrainian military did a valiant job of trying to do as much as they can. But let's be honest here. With the might of Russia, the Ukrainian military knows that there will be an occupation of at least part of the country. But that's only phase one. Because when you have Russian occupiers, what do you get next? You get an insurgency. And that's why you're hearing the call today from the Ukrainian military and President Zelensky that every Ukrainian, they will arm them if they are prepared to use and able to use a gun. So we're going to get the headlines that Russia's going to advance. And then the tough part's going to be, which is one, what will the insurgency do to Vladimir Putin? And two, for the rest of us, what support do we give that insurgency?
And to your point, news coming through, NATO is putting jets on high alert, activating its defence plans. What does that look like? How does that actively support Ukraine?
Well, it does. It protects countries around Ukraine because there's always the possibility. We don't know how far Putin will go. He could go after Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. He could go after Poland, which he's been trying to destabilize. So you don't really want Putin to get even more aggressive, as it were. Secondly, when you activate NATO's air defenses, remember you also have NATO air surveillance. So even though they are not directly in Ukraine, they're surveilling the airspace over Ukraine to see exactly what the Russians are doing, keeping tabs on them.
When you talk about people, arming themselves against the might of a Russia, this could get very bloody. There could be just a terrible human cost.
Yeah, we need to recognize that. I mean, quite over, we gloss over war in terms of tales of heroism versus the villains. And clearly we do have a villain here, Vladimir Putin, and we have heroes. But we need to get beyond the surface image. When Vladimir Putin decided on this further gamble, he failed on his initial gamble to divide the West from Ukraine. Now his further gamble is, I'm going all out inside the country. Ukrainians will resist, and civilians die. It's not just military people who die. And so I would ask your viewers out there, whatever you think about the politics of this, cut through the information and disinformation, and remember, it's the Ukrainian people. It's not Vladimir Putin, it's not the Russian state, it's not President Zelensky. It's the Ukrainian people who are on the front line right now, and they were the ones that will be pawns who will be sacrificed for Putin's ambitions.
Scott, you put it very clearly, and it's a harsh reality. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev.